Sometimes I think about the good days we had, but there were bad days too.
I'm Nicole.
And I'm Paul.
And with our motley crew of numerous children from our blended family, we sail around the Mediterranean on Savvy of London, our XP55 sailing yacht. Please tick that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and thank you for joining us on this journey. As a bit of a bonus episode, we thought we would share with you a tour of Savvy that we shot last year on Instagram footage, so vertical, but it's still a good tour, and the boat was really clean.
We'd spent a long time cleaning it.
We had, so we thought, no time like the present to shoot a tour. So we hope you enjoy this. It is on vertical, but we will do one on landscape again, but it could be a while till the boat's that clean. But first, to set the scene, we thought we'd talk you through why Paul got into sailing in the first place.
The first time I ever sailed was in 2005. I was on a boat with a really good friend who invited me out. It was in the sunshine. We'd had one or two to drink the night before. We went out sailing and it'd been a bit windy, and I wasn't overly aware, but I got on the boat and everything made sense to me straight away, and I loved it. But I didn't actually know anything. It just seemed to make sense. And we went sailing, and 2 hours later, both of these people, they're both yacht masters, I won't name them. That means they're clever and they knew lots about sailing, and I knew nothing. And after 2 hours, they were being quite unwell over the side, and probably the wrong thing to do at the time. I've learnt some sailing etiquette. I filmed them being ill over the side and me in charge of the boat. But do you know, I absolutely loved it. And I was totally bugged. Oh, there's someone after us. See, that's you, isn't it?
It is,
Who was that? Who was that? We'll tell them.
Brad, you're ringing me during the recording.
Brad.
Oh, now this is...
That's one of the children.
One of the children.
This is welcome to the life of sailing savvy. It looks like we have all these... Look at the videos and then watch these little pieces to camera and you'll work out what it's really like.
So anyway, that was your first introduction to sailing.
My first introduction, and it was amazing, and I absolutely, totally bugged with it, but then didn't sail again for a couple of years. Bumped into a friend, children's school friend, who had a yacht and was desperate for somebody to want to go sailing with him in the winter, and I'm absolutely up for everything. So yeah, let's go. And he said, how much do you know? I said, well, I've skippered a boat. And he thought I was really going to be quite good. Truth is, I got on the boat and I loved it. And it didn't matter whether it was snowing or whether the sun was out. Sailing's amazing. So yeah, that was the bug. Sailed, got into racing a bit. And then after about 5 minutes experience, went and bought my first boat, 45 feet, and I think 2 weeks into ownership I was sailing it alone, which everyone frowned upon and thought I was mad, which I was, because I really didn't know that much. But fortunately I'm a reasonably quick learner, and so far I haven't lost anyone. And
that was a monohull by X-Yachts?
It was an X442. Beautiful boat, very pretty lines, blue hull, but beautiful boat, sailed well. Had that for a few years, and we sailed it lots of places, through the North Sea in the winter and all that kind of stuff.
Who's the dog?
Here comes Stella. Stella doesn't get to come sailing with us.
No, I'm still trying to get
mainly
Stella
because she likes to run. Anyone like running on boats?
Oh, and here come two of the children. We're recording, girls.
And here's Romy, and we've got Isla, two stars of the show.
So, Paul, when was Savvy launched?
Okay, so quick backstory. Was sailing on Exodus, that was the X442. Doing a bit of charity work at the same time. Was riding my bike on a 500-mile ride, fell off, snapped the neck of my femur, and lost the ability to walk for about a year. And coming back from that was really tough. Soon after, in fact far too soon after the accident, I found myself on Exodus sailing her single-handed, which I got into lots of trouble for, I should add. But I was sitting there in Ramsgate Harbour on Exodus, having just sailed there from another part of the country, and I thought, wow, this experiment for sailing really worked. You know, despite the fact the weather's awful in the UK and the tides, and it's not the nicest place to sail. Sound effects. Yeah, despite all of that, it worked. So I thought, well, okay, the experiment worked. Now, what's the next step? And I'd read about this yacht called an XP55. And I'm a bit of a racer, and I loved sailing racing, did a lot of club racing, won a few series. And it's a beautiful boat. It's a quick boat, beautiful lines, very, very pretty. And it's 55 feet and brilliant, let's do it. So 2 weeks later, I was in Denmark on crutches, unable to walk, test sailing the first built XP55 called Sassy that Graham, if you're there, Graham and think Sue, sorry if I've got that name wrong, bought and is now in Australia on the Whitsunday Islands, and we ordered one that day. And the next year was watching it get built, speccing it, and
Lots of trips to Denmark.
Lots of trips to Denmark, not at the moment of course,
No.
COVID-19, but yeah, lots of trips to Denmark, and Savvy was born in the June of the following year. Savvy is a Bermudian sloop, which means it's got one mast, fractional rigged, which means its mainsail's a bit bigger than its jib, yacht sailing yacht, and it's a bit of a racing yacht. XP stands for X Performance, so it was built to be a racer, but I don't think many of them do much racing. Truth is, it's big enough to be a really comfortable, quick cruiser, and that's why we got it. What you can see here are beautiful lines, a very wide stern, teak decks. It's set up to be a pretty fast cruiser that you can live aboard if you want to. As you can see, it has lovely clean decks. In fact, the decks, all the deck fittings are flush, so you've got a dead flat platform where you can do yoga, which is very important for some people, as you've seen in some of our videos. You need to be a bit of a gymnast to run the boat. So long term, there's had to be a change in that. But this boat is set up so you could go racing in it tomorrow, which I enjoy. I enjoy trimming and getting everything going. But it's a hard work boat. It's hard work, but one person can sail it. So all the lines are brought back to the cockpit, so you can run the boat from the cockpit without leaving for much of any passage, unless you have to do a sail change, and much of that's not necessary because things can be furled away or reefed. So it's a boat that's lovely and clean, well set up for one person to sail if necessary, which accounts for probably half of the miles it's done.
I believe this is a very important part of the boat. What is this here?
This is skipper's chair. This is the chart table. So pretty much all of the systems will operate from here. All the electrical connection switches, all the battery and power management systems, and all the navigation systems are all based from here. In the old days, a chart table is where you'd have your charts lined out and you'd plot your course over the ground and work out where you've been and where you're going and what sort of time frames are involved. Nowadays we've got the likes of the B&G systems, which are immensely useful at making life easy on the sea. Radar, collision avoidance systems, electronic charting, wind instruments and so on. A lot of telemetry on a boat. There are about 150 different numbers being recorded at all times on a B&G system, for example, that tell us what's going on with the boat. This is where you sit on a long night passage. There's no point being upstairs, you can't see, so you turn the radar on. The radar has this thing called a guard zone, which puts an imaginary guard zone around the boat, normally around a mile out, and if anything enters that mile circle, the alarm goes off, tells you there's something nearby and gives you a chance to react. Otherwise, this is where you tend to spend most of your nights when you're on watch. Okay, so we're presently on the island of Mallorca in a place called Soller. A beautiful place, Soller, one of the prettiest ports in the world. It's very natural. As you can see, there's plenty of vessels. The little black things are vessels. If we just zoom in, we are currently in a marina waiting for some pretty horrible weather that's coming in from the east, very strong, to disappear, and then we're going to be sailing over to Barcelona, which is up here. As you can see, these charts work rather like an iPad, but they are absolutely essential. They tell you the water depth, pretty much everything that's going on. It tells you if there's any vessels on here, and obviously the radar will overlay to show you what's going on also. This is the most important device on the boat. Often when I'm sailing at night, I won't turn it on just yet, often when I'm sailing at night, the only thing that stays out is the coffee machine. The coffee machine runs 24/7 and keeps me awake. When you're doing the 3 AM shift, it's pretty hard to stay awake if you've had a very long day sailing. So coffee machine, very, very important. We've got kettles and toasters and all the other stuff, but this is the thing that keeps us going. So we have a water maker, makes around 80 litres of water per hour. We have 600 litres of water storage on board. Water maker broke yesterday, rather frustratingly, but 600 litres keeps you going for a while. Unless you have children on board, in which case they use most of that in one day.
And how do you cook?
Cooking is actually remarkably easy. So we have a freezer, a fridge, a microwave, a gas oven, 3-ring hob. It's like cooking at home. Boats like this are like having a small apartment, and it's pretty much a small apartment. At sea, however, it can be interesting. On a very rough passage, typically you'd make food before the bad weather comes and you snack on it as and when. But if you're forced to cook, and I've made a full chicken curry in a very rough sea once before, there are a few things well set up on the boat. For example, if you're cooking, you can brace against here. Cookers on boats are always gimbaled, which means that when the boat is heeling, it can do this or do this, which also gives you a nice flat surface to work with. If you're chopping vegetables or meat, you can do that on here while it's gimbaling. But it is an acquired taste and an art which needs practice.
Because the saying is, if it flies, floats, or no, if it fornicates, flies, or floats, hire it. But you would only ever own a boat.
Why have I never heard that before?
Oh, you have.
My goodness, I could have saved myself so much
Yeah, but all the
heartache and
fun.
anguish and
So,
fun. Fun, I forgot about the fun.
But you did some modifications on Savvy as well, so it was more family friendly. Is that right?
Yeah, so I wanted a boat. If you've ever raced sailing, then every time you see a boat, you're racing, and I've kind of got a bit of that in me. I can't help it. So I wanted a boat that sailed well, that we could race if we wanted to, but ultimately it needed to be comfortable, family, happy. I wanted to spend a lot of time on it. It was a nice experience to build the boat, from a racer to a family cruiser.
And so then you explored Europe with your family and friends.
Yes, yeah, we had great fun. The boat, they wanted the boat. It was the only one in the Northern Hemisphere. There were only 3 built at the time. They wanted the boat at all the boat shows. So I said, look, that's great. What I'll do is, my goal for the boat is that it only ever moves with me at the helm.
Which it has done, hasn't
That's
it?
been true the whole time that I've owned it.
And
So
you
yes,
always
move
like
around.
it going to the yacht shows,
Oh, I
don't you?
love it.
Because they clean it.
Yeah. Do you know what though? I keep the boat so clean
Yeah.
and so new looking that I'd arrive there and they'd say, what are we going to do with this? It's already perfect. So I didn't get it clean.
Not
That was
anymore.
so stupid. Well, right now I haven't seen it since August. So
No, it's grown roots.
yes,
Since
I think
September,
it has.
yeah,
Since
1st of September.
September. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, going to boat shows is good because yeah, the boat gets nicely looked after. It's certainly got a good clean and tidy inside and a bit of a clean outside. So welcome to the owner's cabin. The cabin is forward, has a nice big king-size bed, nice and airy, nice views out over the bays when you're anchored from the port lights.
So, Paul, what really strikes me about this boat is that it's really efficient as far as the storage, and yet there is quite a lot of storage spaces on board.
Yeah, the boats, when they're built, they're computer-aided design, and every place you can get a bit of storage, there's a bit of storage. So there are cupboards, boxes, flaps everywhere, and a huge amount of storage. You could provision this boat to not go to shore for probably 3 months if you needed to. We do have water makers, generators, etc. on board, washing machines, dishwashers, all of these things, modern conveniences. And ultimately, it's its own little island. You need a lot of storage for that, and obviously some dried food. Yes, you could survive for quite some time on here.
So you can eat and sleep. How do you shower and, more importantly, go to the toilet on a boat?
So the boat has 2 shower rooms, wet rooms with heads toilets in them. They're all tanked on board, all fresh water running as any home would have. So just in here is the owner's shower room, wet room, where there is a nice picture of my former vessel, the toilet, and a nice shower area, wet room. They're doing plenty of storage in there. So at the stern of the vessel we have 2 double berths. They also have sea berths in. So it's a nice comfortable room. This is the smaller of the 2. In here, a nice large double bed. These cots here, these are really useful for putting children in. We've often had heads and tails, what do they call them, top and tail children in these. They also do this. The reason for that is when you're sailing, the boat can be heavily heeled, often over 30 degrees, and this stops crew members falling out, which is rather useful when you're at sea. I've slept in these a few times at sea. They're very comfortable, and there's a lovely window here where you can see the world going by.
And you've seen dolphins before, haven't you?
Dolphins out of these windows forwards, yeah, lots of dolphins, hundreds of dolphins. Probably the most magical experience was a pod of sperm whale, which we saw out of these windows and then went and got in the water with. They were quite something.
Yeah, you got some beautiful footage of those. Was it quite frightening to see a pod of huge whales that were, what, as big as the boat?
The male was 60 feet. He was bigger than the boat and weighed 3 times what the boat weighs. And at one point he did get a little angry. So yes, quite unnerving. They're big creatures, but so peaceful up to that point, and the young were so beautiful to watch. Very graceful. So this is the larger of the 2 aft staterooms, cabins, whatever you want to call them. In here we have access, not only the same setup as next door, but we also have access to generator, water maker, all the electronic components. There's engine access here. Beneath here are all the domestic batteries, all the hot water systems and so on, and a huge amount of storage.
And what happens if you're under sail or you're motoring along and something breaks?
Yeah, that happens a lot. A great deal. You have to fix it. You're out at sea. You can't call the AA, you can't call an engineer, you have to learn. So this boat I've been sailing, I sailed it probably 15,000 nautical miles now, and everything pretty much has broken at least once. So you learn to fix on the fly. Most of it requires a great deal of logic, but you work out how to fix things, or to get around them. There's this thing in sailing called a jury rig. It's what you do to something to make it work even though it's broken. You do a lot of jury rigging on boats.
Hey.
So going to and from shore happens with a dinghy. This dinghy goes into the transom at the back. We deploy it wherever we get to a beach or an anchorage, and we go ashore and find nice restaurants. And then often in the dark, after a few glasses of wine, I very professionally drive it back to the boat, and I always tie it on. Always tie it on.
Always.
Always. I've never once left it untied and found myself in trouble having to go and find it in the middle of the night. That's never happened.
Never. You've never had to impress 3 women on
and I
board
wouldn't
by
be at all
doing that.
embarrassed if it did, I'd tell you, of course.
And there you have it. That is Savvy, our home on the water. Catch up with us in the next episode, where we head off to Menorca, climb a hill, watch a sunset, and Nicole meets the special rats.